Welcome to Anything is Possible, the Boston Celtics podcast here on the Athletic Podcast Network. I am your host, Sam Jam Packard, professional sports fan, and I am joined live from Las Vegas, the kid, the god, the legend, Celtics beat reporter from The Athletic, Jay King, ladies and gentlemen, and we are coming to you with big news. Congress has passed a $1 trillion. No. I'm just joking. Jay King doesn't want to speak about the bipartisanship. We're talking about Dennis Schröder here. The Celtics have signed Dennis Schröder to the mid-level exception. They avoid being hard capped 1 year, $5.6 million. Schroeder, who turned down a 4-year, $80 million contract offer last year from the Lakers, going for betting on himself again. And the Celtics get a veteran point guard, something that seemingly every pundit has said they needed to get this offseason. Jay, what is your reaction to the Schroeder? Is it Schroeder? What's your reaction to the Schroeder signing?
It was a complicated reaction because
nuance. Embrace nuance, baby.
I don't think he's a great fit for the Boston Celtics, this Boston Celtics roster. I think obviously they needed a little more scoring, but they need shooting. Their backcourt now has 33% three-point shooters who are likely to play big minutes in Marcus Smart, Josh Richardson, and Dennis Schröder. And so it's just a weird mix around Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. You have Schroeder, who's going to be playing for a contract on a 1-year, basically prove-it deal. You have Enes Kanter, who's coming back sort of to his old home and probably going to be a third-string center after starting in Portland. You got Al Horford, who knows he's probably not part of the Celtics' long-term plans. You've got just a lot of moving pieces. And for Ime Udoka, I think it's going to be a puzzle to get everyone on the same page. And there are going to be a lot of conflicting individual goals for the season. And so I think that's another layer to this that could come into play. But then the other part of this signing is that the Celtics got Dennis Schröder, who is a highly productive player, who 2 seasons ago was second and sixth man of the year voting and averaged 18 points and 4 assists off the bench. And they got him for $5.9 million on a 1-year deal without touching their future financial flexibility. So when you look at it that way, it's a no-brainer signing. They had to do it. They should have done it. And they can figure out the rest later. They needed more talent, and Schroeder is definitely a talented guy.
Yeah, I think it makes sense just because why not? There's like a very low risk for this deal in terms of you just pay him for this 1 year. If he turns his value around, maybe you can trade him at the deadline. Maybe you just let him walk for nothing and just say thanks for your year of service, Dennis Schroeder. But they didn't hurt their future flexibility. I think the offseason is interesting because they've brought in Schroeder, Richardson, and Kanter and Horford and got rid of Kemba Walker, Evan Fournier, Tristan Thompson, and Semi Ojeleye. And so I don't think that's really an upgrade in talent. I don't know if it's necessarily a better fit for the roster because I still think, as we've been talking about this entire offseason, they don't have those wings that I think you just need to succeed in the NBA. But they basically were able to make all those moves, which I would describe at best as a kind of lateral moves. And then they opened up all this kind of flexibility for the future. So they were able to kind of do all these things, get off the Kemba contract, get off just having to deal with Tristan Thompson, maintain all this flexibility, not having to re-sign Fournier. And they still brought in some talented players. Like Josh Richardson is still a very talented defensive player, can do some things on offense, not like you mentioned, not a great three-point shooter. Schroeder, despite only shooting 33% from three last year, still averaged 15 points a game. In his 6-man year, he averaged close to 19 points a game. So I think it's interesting in that regard. The question for me is, one, Schroeder thought he was going to get over $100 million. Is he ready to come in And does he expect to start? Does he expect to get 30 minutes a game? How much is he playing? And do you have a crowded backcourt now where Smart, Richardson, Schroeder are all expecting 30 minutes? We just basically just is Peyton Pritchard just pissed off right now? I'm very curious to see what the fit's going to be, but I do think it was a depth piece that they needed to add in a circumstance when I don't really know else who was on the market that's going to be the perfect 3-and-D guy that you were getting for the deal that Schroeder signed.
Yeah, there was basically nobody in that mold who would have made a difference at that point in time. So to get Schroeder at the taxpayer mid-level exception, I mean, it's a steal. It really is. That being said, you look at the roster, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on Aaron Nesmith and Romeo Langford to play solid minutes. There are going to be, I think, you say it's a crowded backcourt. I think some of those guys will just end up being the wings. Like Marcus Smart, I think, from what I've been told, the plan was to start him at point guard. I don't know if Schroeder will change that plan. But Ime Udoka said he intends to put the ball in Marcus Smart's hands a lot more. So my guess would be that Smart is a starting point guard. I think now that they're super small, maybe Josh Richardson starts at 2 instead of bringing him off the bench. And then I think there's going to be, a lot on Aaron Nesmith and or Romeo Langford to prove that they can play. And that's just how it's going to be. Like you said, like they just don't have the wings and the wings with size that you really need in the NBA, or at least proven guys. If Langford, if Nesmith can handle that, then they have Tatum, they have Brown. Smart and Richardson are both big guards who can handle a lot of that stuff. So they could end up having the versatility, but a lot of it comes down to whether those young guys are ready to do it. And I don't know if they are, but Nesmith was hot yesterday.
We'll get to Nesmith and we'll get to all the summer league analysis moving forward. I think the question for me, I kind of like Dennis Schröder in that 6-man role because the defensive lineup of Smart, Richardson, Tatum, Brown, and Rob Williams, that seems like an elite 5-man lineup. And I'm going to test you. You'll know all the statistics. What was the Celtics offense ranked last year? Because we know they did not have a top 10 defense. So they were 10th. They lose Kemba Walker. They lose Evan Fournier. But Fournier had COVID and really didn't have a huge offensive impact. It feels like being 10th in the league was on the backs of Jason Tatum being Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, especially early on in the season, just shooting like 75%.
And the offensive numbers were much better when Kemba was in the lineup too. So there's a lot that has changed offensively for them. And as Ime Udoka was saying in his press conference, he wants Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to take huge steps forward as playmakers. They need those guys to take huge steps forward as playmakers. And I think obviously when you look at the roster, one calling card for them could be the defensive ball pressure. They have a lot of gritty guards who can get up in you, who can pressure the ball, who can make things uncomfortable for ball handlers. Marcus Smart and Josh Richardson are 2 of the best in the entire league at that. They both have a lot of size. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they're wings who can make things uncomfortable for guards. They can make things uncomfortable for other wings. And then Nesmith, Langford, like you have a lot of guys with defensive potential. Peyton Pritchard, he's another gritty guy. Dennis Schröder, he's always been an agitator. The Celtics know that. Like Isaiah Thomas hit him. Remember that during the playoff series years ago. So they have a lot of guys that are in that mold of irritants. And I think that's how they're going to have to build their defense around that strength. And I think in a perfect offseason, they would have gotten more size, especially at the power forward position. You look at their roster, like, what are they going to do there? I think they could play Al Horford significant minutes there. I think they could end up starting Al Horford at power forward. I think that's an option that will be on the table. I don't think that will be a good thing, or at least I have serious doubts about whether that would be a good thing.
It did not work in Philadelphia. Let's just say that.
Yeah, no, not at all. And obviously the situation is different in Boston. Like Ben Simmons was a 3 in that situation, whereas in Boston, it's Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who are both very talented scorers and shooters at that spot. So maybe things are different. Maybe you can get away with that. But at the same time, like, that's an area of potential weakness for the Celtics, that they don't have enough size there. They're going to have to be gritty. They're going to have to be up in guys. They're going to have to be fast and swarming and all that. And Chris Dunn, if he's on the roster, if they don't end up moving him, that's another guy. Like, when he's healthy, if he's healthy, he's one of the better guard defenders in the entire league. And so if he's healthy and it's Smart, Richardson, Dunn just hounding guys, then that's the beginning of a defensive identity. And that's what I think Ime Udoka will try to tap into. That's what I think that will be, what he stresses from day one. And that's going to be how they're going to have to play, because they don't really have the size in the front court, especially at like power forward. Like, they just don't have a power forward. They don't have.
I mean, other
it's
than
just like
Tatum
and Brown can both play that spot, obviously. But I think one of the goals this summer was to go out and get bigger at that spot, and they didn't do that. So maybe Grant Williams takes a step forward. Maybe Al Horford plays that spot. Maybe they just go small, and they'll have plenty of different lineup opportunities to go small, because they now have some serious guard depth.
Yeah, I think the formula is clearly we're going to try to be like a top 5 defensive team in the league, and then on the offensive end, it's Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Like, you're like trying to.
And Al Horford, don't forget about Al Horford, because he's really going to help with playmaking and opening things up, and Robert Williams too. Like, he's another guy who offensively very good.
But it feels like the clear, just with all the people they brought in, is like this and it's something that's been a staple of Brad Stevens' teams in the past, and it's definitely something that slipped last year, is like they're going to be a high octane, one of Brad's favorite terms, getting into the ball, like they're going to be a high pressure defense. And then on offense, it's just relying on Tatum and Brown. And as Ime Udoka mentioned in his, what was that, just like one of those random summer league press conferences that kind of happened?
Yes, summer league scrum. He spoke at halftime of the summer league game. It's weird. It's weird in Vegas. Like, we're not allowed to go back in the area where the players and executives are allowed, but when someone speaks, we're like ushered into the back room and we're escorted, and it's just very bizarre.
I think the thing that's interesting about Ime's comments about developing Tatum and Brown as playmakers is, what makes like a playmaker's job easier? Open shooters or guys who can knock down 3-pointers. So it's like, it's great if you want to put the ball in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown's hands, but if you have Schroeder in the corner, or you have Richardson in the corner, or guys who are just not able to knock down those open threes, it doesn't really matter how good of a playmaker Tatum and Brown are. So it's like they're going to be very reliant on those two guys creating offense for others, but they really haven't surrounded them with kind of those knockdown shooters that you would want. And it just really feels like they're just trying to build this defensive identity. And maybe that doesn't matter if you can get a bunch of buckets in transition. You can and you're really out like moving like that. And then you just have Jason Tatum, who can be a 30-point a guy night, and Jaylen Brown, who can be a 25-point a guy night. Like that's all you need to be a contender. From the Ime press conference, was there anything kind of other that stood out other than kind of talking about the playmaking of those two guys and Marcus Smart as the starting point guard? Anything else that came from?
He said the Celtics have a ton of high-level young shooters, which, number one, I'm not convinced. Number two, he must be talking about Aaron Nesmith and Peyton Pritchard. And I think that Nesmith and Pritchard in particular on this team, they're swing variables that could raise the ceiling for this team, because you look at the roster and shooting is going to be an obvious need around Tatum and Brown. And you're not going to get it from Schroeder. You're not going to get it from Richardson. You're not going to get it from Smart. Those guys could all have better shooting seasons. They're not going to be knockdown guys. They're not going to be guys you don't leave. They're not going to be guys that teams are worried about. But Pritchard shot more than 40% last year. Nesmith hit 7 threes in the Summer League game, but beyond that, it's just Summer League. He has a reputation as just a great, great shooter. And if he can take steps forward in his development and become that in year 2, then that could really change things, I think, for the Celtics roster and give Ime Udoka a lot of different options to keep enough shooting on the court. So I think those two guys are going to be important. Pritchard obviously will have a lot of competition in the backcourt for minutes. But Nesmith, like, he's a wing. They need wings. He's a shooter. They need shooting. I think he's going to be pretty important for their team. And if he is good, I don't know if he will be, but if he is good, that can really, really change things for them. And, man, he was good yesterday.
That he was. We'll get to the 2 Summer League games, but I just wanted to shout out all the fans and commenters out there. If you're watching on the YouTube, you can see Jay, who refused to put down his shade because he wanted the sunlight. But many people are asking if you are in witness protection out there in Las Vegas. And so, Jay, I just want to just blink if you are okay and you are safe.
You won't even be able to see me if I blink.
That's a fair point. I cannot see your eyes right now. We are not making eye contact.
Yeah, I've got a total glare, but I had to keep the backdrop. I had to keep the sun.
Part of the fun of being in Vegas is waking up, like pulling up those shades, seeing the just ridiculous
podcasting at 8 a.m.
Yeah, we love the effort from here from Jay King. We've mentioned it a little bit, but Peyton Pritchard and Aaron Nesmith have just been Nesmith more so in the second game, but I think Pritchard has been very solid in these first 2 Summer League games. Obviously, it's Summer League. Obviously, everything comes with a grain of salt. But for 2 guys who are in their second year, that's what you want to see when you're in Summer League. You want to see guys who are clearly the best players on the court. Peyton Pritchard seemed to have a clear handle of the game and was making the right decisions, showing off a little range. Like
a lot of range. That dude's got endless range.
So the thing is, like, you can't read too much into it from a positive, but I think the thing you can do in Summer League is, like, if someone shows out there in their second year and just looks lost, then that's a red flag. And so far, there's not been red flags from Pritchard or Nesmith. Romeo has had a bit of a different path. I wouldn't say he's dominated. He did have one monster dunk.
That was
pretty damn cool.
Pretty awesome, yeah.
He's got a new number, a new haircut. I'm not sure if we're seeing a new Romeo, but I'm curious. You've been at these games at UNLV. What's been your impression, especially from those 3 guys the Celtics are going to need or want an impact from moving into next season?
Yeah, I think with Pritchard, the thing for him, as a rookie, he showed he could be a floor spacer. He showed he could be that secondary shooter. He had a bunch of games with 4 or more made 3-pointers. He almost set the franchise record for most threes in a single season for a rookie. And Jason Tatum, who has a record and barely beat Pritchard, played like twice as many minutes. So he had a productive rookie season. The thing for him is how much can he grow as a playmaker? How much can he grow as a point guard? How much can he grow into all those other responsibilities that you'd love to see him grow into? Because if he's just a shooter, if he's just a floor spacer at 6'2" or whatever he is, then there's a limit to how good he could be.
But if he
can run your offense, if he can be the lead ball handler, if he can handle a lot of those playmaking duties, then that changes things for him, and that could change the trajectory of his career. So I think it's been all good things on that front. One thing I've noticed a lot is they're really pushing the pace. Like he's looking to run. Joe Mazzulla has stressed that he wants the Celtics to push the pace, and they're tracking pitch aheads and points off pitch aheads, which I've never heard before. I don't know if that's something Brad Stevens
qualifies as a pitch ahead. How does that get registered as
a
stat?
in transition, if Peyton Pritchard has the ball and he outlets it out or throws it out to somebody far down the court.
What differentiates an outlet pass from a pitch ahead?
I would get like a Jared Sullinger outlet pass down the court would be labeled a pitch ahead would be my guess.
All right.
So yeah, and it's obvious. And then what probably the most interesting thing from my perspective that Missoula has said while they're in Vegas is that they think that guys who play with pace, guys who, really play with a sense of urgency on offense, like guys who are going to be cutting hard and stuff like that, that's what they're looking for next to Tatum and Brown. And so we talk a lot about how they need shooting, how they need this and that. But I do think that more activity, and because those guys, like, for as good as they are, they're not the best off-ball players. They're not going to be rocketing around screens. They're not, and we saw that last season. And so I think if you can give them guys who are going to do some of that and be really, intent on getting out in transition, running lanes, everything like that, then that could be very helpful. And that's been a huge focus for them.
I think that's one thing we've seen with some successful teams over the past couple of years. I'm thinking of the Lakers specifically. The Lakers have not really had a great half-court offense, but one way to avoid kind of getting into your half-court offense is playing great defense and getting out in transition, and you rely less on spacing if you're just getting those easy baskets. And so the speed, love tracking the pitch ahead, so I hope they keep tracking that stat throughout the rest of Summer League, but that's just another way to play fast. You mentioned playing off-ball. Aaron Nesmith, if he can be a guy who comes off screens and can shoot off the catch and knock down threes the way he was against the Nuggets Summer League team, that it just creates so much more pressure on the defense if you have to keep track of him and he's constantly moving. What have you seen from Nesmith other than just straight buckets so far in Summer League?
I just think he's more comfortable. There was, especially early in his rookie season, he looked lost. He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't look confident. And now he's comfortable. Now he knows what's going on. Now the game is totally slowed for him. And I think even when he missed shots during the first game, that was obvious. Like, he was getting the looks he wanted. He was getting the shots he wanted. And he's comfortable. And that obviously that started to evolve in his rookie season. By the end of his rookie season, he was playing pretty well. And for him to take a step forward, I think the shooting is going to be the most important. He's talked about how he wants to, work on shots when he's more contested and be able to hit shots when, there's a hand in his face. And I think he has a chance to be a great shooter because he has size. He can shoot off the move. He can do a lot of those things. And if he can continue to hone that and harness that, then that's a skill that will fit so well next to Tatum and Brown. But at this stage, he was an up and down shooter as a rookie, and he's got to prove that he can do that consistently at the NBA level before I'm willing to give him the high level young shooter role or label that Ime Udoka apparently.
In college, he was a high-level shooter, and he is young. I think you got to hype up your own guys so they start believing it. Do you think there's a space or a potential for Nesmith to step into I've seen some start Nesmith stuff just because he does have that size and gives you much more spacing? Is there potential for him to kind of evolve into that? I don't think it's something he's going to start the season, obviously, in the starting five, but is the Celtics, are they at their best potentially with Aaron Nesmith knocking down 40% of his threes and being out there with his high energy?
Yeah, I obviously I don't know yet. I think they'll need spacing both in the starting lineup and on the bench. You look at their bench guys, and
so play Nesmith all 48 is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. What is their bench going to be? Maybe Schroeder, maybe Chris Dunn, maybe Enes Kanter. They're going to need shooting everywhere, whether it's starting, whether it's off the bench. Anybody but Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and maybe Aaron Nesmith and Pritchard are shooting problems. Al Horford can shoot a little bit. He can space the court, obviously, but they really don't have they have a lot of bad shooters in their rotation, or not great shooters at least. So Yeah, it's a skill that's going to be like a priority for them, and Nesmith can do it. And I think he can do it. They think he can do it. He thinks he can do it. Now he's just got to do it.
With him,
that was high-level analysis.
That was great analysis. He just needs to do it. But I think the thing that's interesting is, like, where does that leave? Say Nesmith does show up and do it. Where does that leave Romeo Langford? Like, he knocked down a big three in game 1 of Summer League, but I don't know if that's indicative of him being a reliable three-point shooter. He's been athletic when he's made impacts so far. It's been on the defensive end. Like we said, they feel like they have a lot of kind of guards, less so wings, who can be impact defensively. Like, what is Romeo's role on this team moving forward? And has he shown any growth, or is he demonstrably better or more locked in this very small sample size of 2 Summer League games? Other than his haircut, other than his number change, other than an amazing dunk, what do we see you've seen from Romeo, and what do we expect from Romeo starting next season?
He could prove me wrong, but I think he's in danger of being lost on this roster because there's a lot of overlap for what he brings. There are a lot of other guys who can bring that defense, that intensity, that ball pressure, and he just hasn't found ways to impact an offense. And he's got to do that. He has to be able to find some sort of offensive niche. I don't know whether that's being a ball handler. I don't know whether that's being, a more competent three-point shooter. I don't know what the lane for him is, the path for him is to being a competent offensive player. And that's a problem. And I think because Ime Udoka will probably be prioritizing shooting on some of the fringe rotation pieces, that Romeo doesn't fit into that. And I just think that the way that things are set up on this roster, and things could definitely change. He could take advantage of an opportunity. He could, just set the world on fire in training camp. Anything could happen. But as I look at things right now, there are a lot of guys ahead of him on that depth chart. And he's going to have to force his way into the rotation. He's going to have to, really convince the coaching staff that he's a better option than some of the veterans. And also Nesmith, who brings a lot of what Romeo does defensively and then adds the element of being a high-level young shooter.
I'm just trying to figure out what role or what lineup where Romeo fits in. Like, if they're trying to go super long and switchy, I still feel like there's probably 5 guys who you would rather have on the court than Romeo. Like, maybe if they want to go with a longer switchy bench unit, then you can put in Romeo and Nesmith and but he feels like just absolutely a regular season player. And I just don't know where exactly that fits. But I think the similar question for Grant Williams, who's not playing Summer League. There's a lot of discussion about why he's not playing. Obviously, he's played a lot more minutes than Romeo, but I don't know if Grant necessarily has a fit on this roster either. He is the new VP of the Players Association, which is great for Grant. But I see Grant being the most effective as a small ball 5. They bring in Enes Kanter. They already have Robert Williams. They have Al Horford. Grant would be, I think, the 4th string center right now. I don't know if he's that effective at power forward, but we have mentioned kind of the need for them to have someone play in that power forward position. I guess what's your reaction to him not playing Summer League? Because Romeo was basically told you need to play Summer League, which I thought was a hilarious quote. And it makes sense just given how little time he's played in the NBA so far. But what do you think, Grant? What do you think of him about him not playing? And what do you think, where did he fit in this roster, just considering how many bigger guys they have in front of him on the depth chart?
I think it was if I were him, I would have chosen to play in Summer League. I'll say that, because when the team comes to you and gives you the opportunity to play, they probably want you to play. And
did they give him the opportunity and he declined?
Yeah. He spoke to Sherrod Blakely about that and told Sherrod that the Celtics gave him the opportunity, and he turned it down. They said, you can do either way. You can play, you can not play. It's your choice. And he decided not to. I think
not a great look.
I question whether that's the right decision, because I think there are a lot of things that he needs to expand upon. And especially offensively, he needs to show that he can hit shots. He needs to show that he
doesn't have a thing. Like, what does he do offensively that is like a solid skill that you can rely upon Grant? Like, his best thing, I think, is hustle and defensive and rebounding. But on offense, I don't know what he does. He's not a guy you can pick and pop with. He's not like a role guy. It's very difficult to figure out, like, how is he adding value on the especially in the half court.
Yeah, and I think there are skills there. Like, he is a high IQ guy. He hasn't really shown much of his passing, but at Tennessee, he was a very good passer.
But are you going to run with like offense, like give it to him at the elbow?
I think like he could probably do a better job of like punishing switches in the post. Like he is a good post player. So there's a lot that he could improve upon, but he needs to show he can do it. And then he's another guy that could get squeezed out of the rotation because the Celtics are going to need to put shooting in there. And I do think there's going to be a need for them to have size, to have physicality. And Grant does that. Grant sometimes does too much of that and gets called for fouls. And
he's very good at going straight up, though.
Except when he hip checks you and gets a foul. But yeah, I just think like he's another guy who he has a lot of details to refine, but there is a path to playing time for him because, like I said, the power forward position is something that they're going to need to be a little bigger there at times, and they don't have Shemi Ojale anymore, and Grant is like their lone guy in that mold, assuming Jabari Parker, who's on a non-guaranteed deal, does not make the final roster. So he has a unique physicality on that team, and maybe that helps him get on the court. And who knows, maybe it's a good decision for him to be in summer league, and he's spending the offseason working on the skills that he needs to be more of an impact player offensively. But I just felt like he could have benefited from a little bit of summer league action. And he's not a guy, even though he's been in the rotation a lot for his first 2 years, like he's not a guy that's like necessarily like too good for summer league or something like that. I think didn't Jaylen Brown even play summer league his third year?
I think it was the type of thing where he played
like a few games,
one or two games, and then it was like, all right, good to go. Which is, I think that's the move if you're a third league guy, is you just go, you work out with the team, and you play a couple games, and I think it makes sense. The thing about Grant is he did play 63 games last year, and so he does have a lot of NBA experience. So I can understand him thinking like, I don't necessarily need to like you want him to, I guess, be hungrier and kind of wanted to prove himself, but he does, like, compared to Romeo, he has so much more NBA experience. The fact that he played 63 games last year, started 9 of them, and now we're talking about where he fits on the roster, is that a sign that the Celtics have upgraded their roster because they don't have a need to play him necessarily 63 games? Or is it just that they brought in a bunch of guys who play much smaller? And
I think it's more of a sign that in those 63 games, he just wasn't very good.
So it's all Grant's fault.
Yeah. Yeah. No, honestly, like, it's not necessarily that they've upgraded. They certainly have not upgraded the position he plays, which last year was normally 4. I just think that in his second year, his progress stalled. I thought he had a promising rookie season. I thought defensively he showed a lot. I thought even during the playoffs that rookie year, some of the Celtics' best defensive stretches came with Grant on the court, and specifically when he was at center. But year 2, he didn't show much progress. And maybe that's partly due to the pandemic. Maybe that's partly due to the lack of an offseason, the lack of time to improve, everything like that. That all factors into it. But the reason we're talking about him in this way is because in his second season, he stalled out. He didn't show progress. He remained very foul prone. He started off hot from 3-point range, but then after the All-Star break started missing very consistently again.
He did finish the year shooting 37% from three, which is not bad over an entire season for a guy at his size.
Yeah, but he didn't shoot much, and if you look at the splits, like that was
only
very
two a game. Yeah,
weighed heavily toward a hot couple months at the beginning of the season, and then if you look at it after the All-Star break, I think he was like 23% or something like that. It was in the 20s. So he still has a lot to prove as a shooter. Teams still leave him wide open. And so I think that's why the conversation about Grant is what it is, rather than, that they've upgraded the roster. I think they've upgraded the roster. I think they've found more defensive aptitude. I think they have a path to potentially having a very disruptive defense this season. And there's at least like a way for them to choose to kind of defend and have a bunch of similar long athletic guys on the court. But we'll see.
We are 36, almost 37 minutes into our first Summer League podcast, and I'm shocked we have not brought up the legend, more legendary than Witness Protection Program J. King, live from the Sunset Strip, Yam Madar. The Yam train is here. After that first game, I thought Yam is destined for greatness. Yam thinks he's coming over. Yam plans to play on the Celtics next year. I don't know if that's in the future for Yam, because the Celtics, after signing Schroeder, currently have 15 guaranteed contracts. And
plus Jabari Parker, who's on a non-guaranteed deal.
And they could only sign him to a 2-year, I think, minimum contract now. I mean, just talk about the Yam experience. He was a lot of fun in that first game, doing some crazy stuff, plays with a lot of confidence. Cedric Maxwell said he plays with a lot of arrogance, which I liked.
He's got swag.
He's definitely got swag. What's it like to experience Yam in person?
It's electric. No, but he obviously is another guy. He disrupts the ball handler. He plays hard. He does have a flair to his game. Some of his passes are just really creative. I think the one thing that stood out about, or not the one thing, but one thing that stood out beyond all the positives is he needs a lot of physical development. Like he's a skinny teenager, man. Like he really has a lot of strength development that he needs to do, I think, to be more of an option at the NBA level.
You hear that, Yam? Jay King is calling you small and a weak boy.
Yeah, I am. You heard that, Yam? And there's nothing you can do about it because you're a small, weak boy. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I just think that he's exciting. He does play with a style that's fun. He has a bravado to him. But I think at this stage, like, Peyton Pritchard is very clearly a more polished, developed point guard, and Yam is going to have to probably develop overseas. I would imagine the Schroeder deal like pretty much ended all hopes of Yam playing on the Celtics this season, even though he wants to, and even though he said he hoped he was going to, or thought he was going to.
Is there any way they can get him to a two-way contract? They've already signed Hauser for a two-way. I just don't know how the cap things works. Like, could they sign him for that second two-way? Or is that already given to Taco Fall? What's Taco Fall's status?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the two-way deal is. Yeah, I was surprised, like, that we haven't heard anything really about Tremont or Taco at this stage of the offseason.
Well, Tremont's gone. Tremont obviously wants an opportunity.
But I mean, like, where's he going to play? Like we
it's
haven't.
not good for him that he's not on a summer league roster right now, because that's normally the path for young players to make it into the league.
Speaking of former young Celtics, I saw RJ Hunter in Las Vegas.
At the craps table?
That's a good dude. No, just walking on the side of the road. RJ
That's
Hunter.
not something that happens in Vegas. I mean, one time I think me and you walked from all the way to UNLV campus back to the Strip, and it was awful. It was about 104 degrees out. But walking on the side of the road is not something that normally happens, unless you're talking about like in between casinos.
Yeah, it was in between casinos.
Okay, that makes sense.
Saw my man RJ Hunter, who's playing for the Sydney Kings. The Sydney Kings.
That good for RJ. One thing that's interesting, someone who did get added to the Celtics Summer League roster, former standout at the University of Maryland, Bruno Fernando, playing big. He is one of those 15 guaranteed contracts. What's your impression of Fernando, and is he just the 15th guy on the roster at this point? Actually, I would put him 13th, Chris Dunn 14th, and Carson Edwards 15th. But what can they expect from Fernando?
I mean, I don't think they should expect much from Bruno Fernando.
He is large, though. Being large is important.
Being large is important, and he's large and athletic. He's a mobile, large guy. You know, he's not some just big old stiff. He's young. He's just about to turn 23 on August 15th, so that's very soon. I thought he was impressive during his summer league debut. I thought he brought a level of physicality. He clearly likes defense. Said his favorite player is Kevin Garnett, which obviously wins points from Celtics fans every time.
He's done his research. Yeah,
he also went on to say that sometimes he just talks nonsense on the court.
I love that.
Yeah. So he's taking that Kevin Garnett role seriously. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the roster, there's very little path to playing time for him. You got Robert Williams, you got Al Horford, you got Enes Kanter, you even got Grant Williams, who's been successful at center in the past. So there are a lot of guys in front of him. But he is a big dude. He's a muscular dude. He's a dude who can provide some physicality and wants to do all the dirty stuff. So maybe there's some upside there. But we'll see about that.
This is obviously something we talk when we're talking into analyzing what Bruno Fernando's contributions to the team is going to be.
Yeah, he didn't play much in Atlanta last year. He probably
33 games, averaged 7 minutes in those 33 games, 1.5 points per game. I think he could make a bigger impact moving forward, but who knows?
Yeah. I just think unless the Celtics have injuries, like he will probably get very few opportunities this year. There are just too many proven guys in front of him.
One other guy from Summer League that we have to talk about, the French phenom,
Juhann
Begarin. Tell me what you've seen from this super freak athlete. He's amazing, making defensive plays. I'm loving it. Love that he can just develop in France one more year. I have no idea what he's going to turn into, but he is like really just athletically gifted, and that stands out even watching on television.
Yeah, and the other part of that I've been impressed by is he hasn't really forced too much. You know, like a lot of young guys, especially young, very athletic guys, and he's considered very raw. He hasn't forced stuff. He's kind of played his role. I asked him yesterday if he'd ever played center overseas. He's like, never. and the Celtics threw him in as small ball center at 6'5", and he's strong enough. He's got quick enough feet. He stays in front of his man.
He likes to do defense. He likes to steal.
There's a lot to like there physically. And if he can commit to playing that role of just, you know, Swiss Army knife defense guy who can drive a little but doesn't force things. If he continues to develop a 3-point shot, like there's something there with my man Juhann. He's got some physical tools that, you know, a versatile wing. He already has them at 19 or whatever he is. Very young dude. So he definitely wanted to play for the Celtics this season. There's no realistic path to that, I think. But I think he's been pretty promising as far as like the defensive versatility and showing that he has some of the traits that the modern NBA really, really values.
And just
he's big and strong and athletic.
Able to knock down some corner threes. They're just like, okay, I know it's summer league, but like that's what you want to see. Any guy who's trying to make the league, who's just like willingness to take that shot. Shout out to Ben Simmons, but just a guy who can just comfortably catch and shoot from the corners. Like that's what an athletic wing needs to do in the NBA. And so seeing his kind of freakish athleticism, but also his shot making, I think the shot's always going to be the biggest question with him. Seeing him just knocking down shots with ease in his first kind of real, not NBA action, but NBA light action, I just thought was a good sign from Begarin, who has no chance of being on the Celtics this year. But I think it's a good just sign, and this is going to be what we see from him, and then we're going to see some YouTube highlights of him playing in the French league. But I think it's a fun opportunity to kind of see what he might be able to do.
And I think it's a good flyer draft pick because he does have the tools of players that are very valuable in the NBA. Like if you can guard credibly from power forwards to point guards, then there's usually a space for you on an NBA roster. And he's shown a little bit of that in summer league. And I felt bad. I was interviewing him, and he didn't really. Like I had to keep repeating myself because he didn't really know what I was saying. But then I asked him if language was a barrier on the court, and he's like, "Nope, not at all."
They didn't provide him with a French translator?
No, I mean he can speak English. He's totally fine. But it was in a chaotic room, and a lot was going on, and Juhann did not know what I was saying.
Maybe that's something that the kid needs to work on. Maybe practice his enunciation. Maybe like let's not blame the French 18-year-old.
Yeah, I was probably asking way too complicated questions to a teenager who English is his second language. So, hand up. That's on me.
That's accountability.
I'm a dumbass. That was all my fault.
I'm going to save the debate that everyone's wanting to hear for later in the summer for that 15th roster spot. Carson Edwards versus Jabari Parker. I think we can dive into that later in the summer. But before we go, I just have to mention, this is not something you got to experience because you're live at the games, but NBC Sports Boston, the first broadcast, they had Abby, Chris Forsberg, and then they had Scal and Chris Mannix on. And there's basically not a real broadcast. It's kind of like a conversation. But man, Scal and Chris Mannix were both miserable, and they did not want to be on the broadcast, and it was hilarious. Like, Scal was just grumpy that they pulled him out of his to kind of do this broadcast. Mannix seemed pissed off that he had he's clearly in Vegas and is doing a bunch of networking and stuff, but they were just both miserable, shitting on the entire offseason. Anytime Forsberg tried to start the Yam hype train, they were just like, oh, you're reacting to Summer League, you casuals. They were just furious to be on television, and it turned into a fun experience. It was a little jarring at first to see two men very upset to be on live television, but eventually, once you leaned in, it was just it was a good old-fashioned good time.
That's unfortunate that I missed that. I would have liked to see those guys just bickering about God knows what.
And there's a lot of times where it's like Scouts like, well, you guys think that, but I really know basketball. And he's just like, looked like he's in a cave. They put up a 2008 banner behind him just to make it look more friendly, but he does not want to be there. They brought in Cedric Maxwell, who seemed to lighten the mood, obviously, because it's Cedric Maxwell for the second game, but still do not want to be on television during the summer. They're basically treating it like summer school. That was fantastic. Jay, I'm going to turn it over to you now. I feel like Las Vegas Jay King might be the most powerful Jay King. I just want to hear your reports from Summer League. What's it like to be back? What's it like to be at the gym? Observations from games or other teams? Just what's going on in Vegas? Give us the Jay King Vegas report.
It's fantastic out here, man. It's just awesome to be able to actually cover games again. like as reporters, we hate scrums. Like there is nothing worse than sitting with 30 sweaty, fat reporters and holding out your recorder and asking guys questions they don't want to answer. But now it's awesome to be in a scrum because for 18 months, whatever it was, we haven't had that. It's been all Zoom calls. So I'm just really appreciative of being able to talk to guys. Peyton Pritchard, I wrote a in-depth feature on him. I covered him for a full season. I introduced myself to him the other day, wild. And it's just so strange that these guys who, I've been covering for a while, like just never met them before. And so that part has just been crazy. And yeah, I was talking to Peyton and I was like, yeah, man, so weird I haven't met you yet. He's like, I don't know who you are, man.
I talked to your high school coach. I talked to this person.
I was like, I talked to you, man. But yeah, he was looking at me like, yeah, okay, man, like whatever, weird as hell.
Are there been any prospects that have been like stood out to you? Were you able to see Cade or Jalen Green or any like Scotty Barnes? Anything? Have you been able to go to any other games? And if there are any players who have been like, wow, this guy pops in person?
Yeah, I think Jalen Green has a chance to be special. Like, I didn't watch a lot of him in the G League. I didn't scout a lot of him because the Celtics obviously weren't going to be in position to draft him. So he's eye-opening, man. Like that kid is very, very gifted. I thought Davion Mitchell his defense just really, really stood out. And then like just who else has been really good? Aaron Nesmith.
Aaron Nesmith was
Peyton Pritchard.
Pretty damn good. Both of them were pretty damn good in that second game.
Yeah. What else? What else has been a standout from?
Or like, who's their favorite NBA reporter that you've gotten to see and schmooze with while in Las Vegas?
My favorite.
Is it Tim Bontemps? I bet it's Tim Bontemps.
No, I haven't hung out with Bontemps out here. I mean, I talked to him. Bull. Aaron Freeman asking about Bull, who is he's electric and he's a crowd pleaser. He is an absolute crowd pleaser. Whenever Bull did anything in that Celtics Nuggets game, the crowd just went bonkers. They are big Bull fans. Nobody gets the Taco experience though. Taco was just a Vegas legend.
Where is Taco? We got to pour one out for Taco. Is he out the league? Have we seen the final games of Taco Fall?
I honestly don't know what's going on with his situation. So I'm not sure.
Not reporting anything. This is pure speculation because I don't have any connections, but it's just weird to see him. You think if he's not going to be on the Celtics, he's going to try to be like make it with another team, but Summer League's the place you're going to do that. So somewhat sad for the Taco. No one's going to be able to replicate the Taco experience in Vegas. That was pretty wild. But even just the Taco experience anywhere he plays.
Why aren't you in Vegas? You always come to Vegas.
Because I got stuff to do. And also, I'm going on vacation next week to somewhere that's not Vegas. And so I don't think I could do 2 vacations in 1 year. Next year, I'll try to get back to Vegas. We've had some of our greatest podcast moments in Vegas, that things we can't even talk about on the podcast. So I do miss not being able to go to Summer League. But
I saw your boy Nick Friedman.
I was going to say,
I heard him. I smacked the shit out of him when I walked by him to get his attention.
Did he say what up? Did he remember who you were?
What do you mean? Did he remember who I am?
I don't know. Maybe he's going to big time you. I mean, he's
motherfucker.
He's coaching the hottest, the youngest team in the league. I mean, people are writing articles. Kelly Oubre Jr. is going there. Ish Smith. I mean, the Hornets are the place to be, baby. And it's because Nick Freeman's creating this environment of a fun time. Nick Freeman, front of the bench for the first time. It was a big accomplishment for him. It's going to be front of the bench in Summer League. Hopefully that translates to big figures, Mitch Kupchak. He's still waiting on that contract, and we need big figures for Nick Freeman.
Big figures.
He's an assistant coach now. He is an assistant coach. He's no longer a player development guy. He's an assistant coach. And Kupchak Jordan, hear me. We need you to pay up. So if you see Nick Friedman again, tell him I'm advocating for him. I'm basically going to law school just so I can become his agent. So 3 years from now, expect even bigger figures for Nick Friedman. Jay mentioned it, but I'm going to be on vacation next week. Jay's going to be on vacation next week. So we will be taking a break from the podcast. We'll come back to you after that. So 2 weeks from now with a full analysis of Summer League. Who knows what else we'll be talking about. We'll finally settle the debate. Carson Edwards versus Jabari Parker. Who's going to get that 15th roster spot? Thank you for everyone who's listening. Thanks for everyone commenting and watching on the YouTube. You can now watch all of our shows live on YouTube. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to watch the video. You can see Jay being in witness protection down there in Las Vegas, a silhouette screen. You can see me flexing the guns here in Boston. And thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for subscribing. Give us 5 stars. Do all those things. And Jay, I got nothing. I don't know what to ask about. You ask me a question.
Is nothing potable.